Hi, and welcome to the Math Together show, where thoughtful math educators grow and learn together. We are super excited today to be here with our special guest. I am Dr. Sue Looney.
I'm Heidi Subnani.
I'm Molly Vokey.
And today we're going to be tackling some big issues. We are going to be talking about diversity and inclusion. And specifically, you're going to walk away with answers to begin the conversation around these questions. How do we move from words and statements to action? And then how do we overcome some of the issues that come up? So we are just honored to be here with Dr. Christopher Childs, and I'm going to let Heidi go ahead and introduce.
Yes, our guest today is Dr. Christopher Childs, and he is a sought-after speaker and math educator and author. He is one of the authors on making sense of math for girls, specifically K through 5, and it's really important work there. We really appreciate that as women in mathematics. He has worked in K-12 math education and in post-secondary mathematics education, and Dr. Childs' work focuses on providing math educators with tools to provide inclusive and equitable and engaging math instruction for their students. And so we're really honored that he's here. He is currently doing a workshop online at his website, christopherchilds.com, that really focuses on the work of inclusion and diversity. So we are going to be talking about some of those things today. He's been doing this work for a long time. This is not a new thing for him. So we're really excited that he's here and willing to share his learning and understanding with us today.
Okay, awesome. So Chris, to get us started, I'm gonna get us started. And before we dig into those answers of those really important questions of how do we move beyond those statements, I wanted to hear from you a little bit about your background. If we could get to know you a little bit, why teaching, right? Like, why was that your profession? What's your story behind teaching, and specifically math education?
My story begins, first of all, welcome everybody to Facebook. Make sure you're liking, you're sharing, you're commenting today. We're going to have fun. We're going to have fun, and we're going to talk about a lot of things. My story, the short version, when I first graduated from college, my undergraduate degree is in computer engineering. I thought I was going to be this big-time computer engineer, but different plans occurred. After I graduated, I started to substitute teaching in Tallahassee, Florida. As I substitute taught, I liked it. I actually liked the kids. I love what I was doing every day. And it was an easy transition for me to go from, not initially, it was an easy transition because everyone was saying, you should be an engineer. That's a different lifestyle. I was like, no, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a mathematics educator. Then I transitioned into the education world. And my college buddies in our engineering classes, I would joke with them. I said, if engineering never works out, I'm going to be a professor one day. They're like, why? I was like, look at this guy. He barely comes to class. He's always doing office hours and research. And I looked up his salary at the time, was pretty good. I was like, if it doesn't work out, I'll be a professor. So my journey has gone from being a teacher to a professor. And now I'm in a variety of different places. But it started off with substitute teaching and then having a college professor who I said, if he can do it, I can do it. And that led me to getting the doctorate degree and then becoming a professor. My friends joke to me to this day about, hey, you actually became a professor and did that work. I was like, yeah, I told you it could be done. That's my short story. And then now, as I've transitioned to multiple roles now, it's focused on, I really got to understand what is happening to students and how can we better impact them. So that's my brief story of how do we get here today and where we're at in 2020.
All right, that's so great. I love how you almost surprised everybody around you and yourselves, but we sort of want to be open to opportunities as they come along. So I think we'll dig in, and Heidi, if you want to start us off with our first question.
So one of the things in my following your work online and in the course that you're currently teaching is the idea of systemic purposeful gap, and why that is. And I think we have some ideas around that, and why that work then leads to a combination of diversity and inclusion, and how are those two things different? So maybe you could give us a brief outline of that, because I think sometimes we don't understand the difference between what diversity is and what inclusion is. And I thought you did a really fantastic job of highlighting that in your workshop.
This is why I agreed to be on the show. She jumped in with like that question. What is happening in education? Why are we here? What is going on? Here's the big picture view a lot of people need to understand. Today's educational system is based upon the Western mindset. And it was originally designed, the system that we're in now, for white males.
Mm-hmm.
Later, it included white females, but most importantly, it was the wealthy class.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are like, what does that have to do with today? You know, what's going on? Everything. We think about who is succeeding in the system, who is not succeeding. It's designed that way.
Yep.
Then some people are going to say, well, you know, everyone should be able to, you know, get to that top 1%. Understand when we get there, or to do that, you have to change who you are as a person and assimilate into another cultural system. When we think about it through the lens of education, that's really why we have these gaps. Not because students aren't doing well, not because students cannot learn the material. They're placed in a system that was not designed for them to succeed. If we think about animals, there are always different stories of animals. If we take a fish out of the water, put him or her on land and said, go, they won't succeed because that environment is not conducive to them doing well. It's the same thing within our educational systems, and getting us to understand, how do we develop educational systems that truly cares about each and every student? And when I say cares about each and every student, it's rethinking this whole place of America and what it's all about. I've done a workshop and a presentation where everyone loves to talk about America as this melting pot. Our school system is a melting pot. You know, everybody comes in, and then we're going to push you all out to be something, you know, one American. But I want us to rethink, how can we develop an education system, not that everyone comes in with differences, they assimilate and come out as one. Think about comparing it, not a melting pot, but a salad.
Yeah.
How can we take school and make everyone loves a good salad. And you don't like a good salad because you put it in the blender and mix it all up and pour it out. No, you like a good salad because it has all of these individual ingredients that make it great. The same thing with our schools. We have to think about, how do we have these lettuce, tomatoes, cheeses, if you want to use different meats and different vegetables, different salad dressings. Think about how all of those things come together. Those are our students. And all of them and their experiences need to be brought into play in the educational environment, which leads us to the importance of diversity and inclusion.
So I am going to make it, I kind of want to put us all back on the string, because I know we're all over here taking notes and wanting to jump in. Is this gonna work for us? Is this okay?
Yeah.
I'm like,
I think so.
a bit. Your salad analogy is really awesome, and it's a really good explanation. It made me think of what an opportunity we have right now, right? So I understand and feel personally, but also I have empathy for all of the pain that so many people are feeling in the world right now. There's a lot of things, and then specifically what's happening in the United States with all of the recent issues with George Floyd and beyond. But like what you're describing is so beautiful, and we have an opportunity right now to really do that, to really embrace all learners. And shame on us if we don't come out of this pain with a plan of how to grab hold of that opportunity. So I guess the question might be, like, so how do we do that hard work with educators to recognize, like, we're actually building a salad. We don't want a bowl full of lettuce, right? Like, how do we?
I think, can I interrupt for just 1 second? Because I think it kind of goes back to the whole idea of the Western mindset, right? Where we created schools that were made for this one population of white males. And so what are the things that we have to undo to make the salad possible?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do we burn it down, or do we start from scratch, or can we adjust within? And I think that's what the model has been like, oh, let's just tweak and adjust. Let's change. Like, I think about it like as a meatloaf. Like, that's what we've created, right? So you're going to put barbecue sauce or ketchup on top. Like, that's the big change. Like, we've grinded it all up together, and this is the system, versus actually acknowledging all of those individual parts.
But we think about it, and we think about this change, and everyone says, change takes time, it's slow moving. But we have to think about every student that we're losing along the way.
Right.
And as we think about right now, everybody is reimagining education, rethinking education. What should it be like? But I'm challenging who is at the table during this process, who is not at the table. Yeah. And it's at this point, it's purposeful who we're bringing together, who we're not bringing together. The same people that were excluded before are being excluded again. So we have to rethink every environment we step into. All right, I'm looking around the room. Who is in the room? Who is not in the room? And how do I get more people in the room to have a better decision-making process so I can actually create something that's going to help our students out? I'll give you a perfect example. I love stories. I love examples.
Okay.
Excellent. And we do too.
I'm going on a limb. Do one of you given birth?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I asked you.
All of us.
Oh, everybody. This is the perfect audience. This is a perfect example. Okay. Check this out. Everyone has gone through the birthing process. Yes.
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 Perfect.
Yeah.
I have 2 daughters. I have not gone through the actual birthing process, but I've been from beginning to end to now. I've been there. So we're on the same page in that sense. If we're going to write, I want to write a book entitled The Birthing Process. And this is the perfect time if you're in comments to comment. I want to write a book called The Birthing Process. Who would you choose? Who would you rather have? Our 3 or me write that book?
Right.
Think about it.
Right.
I have a PhD in math. Right. I've seen it. I've been there. I watched Dr. Pimple Popper. I watched YouTube videos about how to go through the birthing process.
Right.
I haven't experienced it, but I know about it.
You should be a chapter.
See, you're taking away from my experience.
Sorry.
Or would you rather they write the book? Yeah. Most of you are going to say they've been there. They had a lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing as we're reimagining education. I'm not invalidating their experience. And in this process, you're not invalidating mine. But if we came together, think about how much better that book would be.
Absolutely.
The same thing with what we're trying to do now with diversity and inclusion.
So can I ask like maybe a follow-up question? So when we consider who's making the decisions, right? So we had, as if we were to talk about specific to math education. So we had the Common Core standards that went out, NCTM, NCSM just put out, they're like, 18 pages of, how we focus, which I haven't read yet. But it's that idea of, okay, like that, those are some decisions there. And I've often said, like, why aren't we collaborating more around how we're teaching these things and doing these things? But then I do wonder, when we go into classrooms, I want to differentiate my professional development with that teacher or with that school because their lived experience is different. Like, so I can't bring a same thing to everybody and just expect that that's going to work. So how do we balance or that difference? Okay, like let's collaborate, let's work together, let's share good ideas around this. And my kids go to a school that looks very different from another person's kids. And so like, how do we balance that?
And we have to think about it when NCTM, NCSM, when we have entities that put out, I call it broad base. Mm-hmm. That's our foundation. Okay. That's just saying, hey, let's give everybody the same foundation. What's the beauty? All of you in different residences. You all have a foundation, but you have a different framework. You have different paintings on one person has the paint on the wall. None of us, all of our backgrounds are plain. But that's the beauty of what happens in the classroom. You can still create, color it, and build it like you want. But we have to, at the very least, agree these are some key things foundationally.
Yeah.
The standards that every student needs.
Yeah, and I love that. I'm writing that down. These are some key things, and that's a really nice way to start. We often talk with schools about like let's start with our vision. What do we believe? But again, we've got to move off of that statement and that vision, and we have to really live it. So we might say we believe in equity for all students, but who are you calling on? Who owns the power of being smart in your classroom, right? Like, how are we paying attention to those implicit moves that happen? But I love that. We have to start with what is it? What is our foundation of what we believe? But then we have to notice, like, are we really living that? Right? Like, it's one thing to say it, but now really who's happening, and then who got invited into that conversation is what you're talking about too.
But it also goes, do our teachers, and don't answer this out loud, don't answer this in the chat. I want you to really think. Do you believe in each and every student?
Right.
Do you truly believe in what ability students bring into the classroom? Thomas Carpenter, he did the work in cognitively guided instruction. I call him the godfather of a problem-solving math ed. He said, build upon the experiences students bring into the classroom.
Right.
Every child, I don't care what they don't have, they come into the classroom with something. Are we willing as educators to take our one-mindedness and say, look, you bring into the classroom this, I'm going to build upon it with grade level material.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
That is so important. But I think schools do this a lot, going back to what Sue was saying, right? You know, they'll develop this lovely vision, and it might be like the best vision you've ever seen. And everybody wants to go to the school because of this vision. But where is the work that's the follow-up about how all of those details, like every little decision, like last week we talked about implicit bias and how many decisions a teacher makes within 1 minute. And there could be 20 decisions in a minute. So like who does that work? I mean, it's not always done, is I guess what I'm saying. Anne Marie is saying she's really enjoying this conversation, and she likes the question about believing in student abilities.
But you make a good point. Who is doing this work?
Right.
As all of us, my frame is always telling people, give your best every single day. And even through giving your best every single day you're going to fail at something. You may fail at being a spouse. You may fail at being a friend. You may even fail in the classroom. As long as you don't fail at the same thing every single day, you're going to be all right. So the same thing we think about these classrooms.
Right.
Some days, my goal every time, 100% of students. But if I miss one student, I'm personally going to beat myself up. But I know tomorrow, guess what? I'm coming back for you. And we have to have that mindset as we go throughout. Every single day, I'm shooting for 100. I'm shooting for the stars. If I miss, I'm shooting for the moon. If I miss, I'm still among the stars every single day. And that way we can't say, I missed a couple or this. No, every day you're shooting for the moon. So you're still hitting. But if you come in every day with these low expectations, I want to remediate, I got to go back. Guess what? You're shooting for the dirt, and you're going to hit the dirt every single time.
Yeah.
Well, that's like a win-win. Like, okay, I met my expectation that we wouldn't get there in that situation.
I think that we give some mixed messages. So I have, I love teachers. I love being in schools. I love being around educators. And I think we give teachers mixed messages. I think it's very much a heart-centered field. And then I want to talk about dealing with the organization versus the individual. So as an individual, I might believe this, but if my administration says, I want to see your SWBAT on the board, all kids will be able to, and you're like, and I don't know, like we approach educators with measuring tools that assume that all kids are exactly the same. And then we pile on this pressure, and then suddenly teachers maybe aren't matching that vision, and they don't know where to go, So I want to talk to you about, you make a distinction in your workshop on the difference between individual's role and organizational role. And I think the key might be, like, if the organization doesn't change, we have silos of really well-intentioned educators who believe in children who are stymied frequently. So I wonder if you can pick up on that a little bit, or if am I making sense?
You're making sense. It brings me one of my favorite quotes. You play the game until you're in a position to change the game.
Yeah.
Now, I'm with you with, students will be able to. We have teachers, you got to do the I can statements. You have to do calendar time. You have to do all these things.
Right.
And teachers, you have to play a give and take. Which battle are you willing to fight? Which battle are you not willing to fight? Yeah. But in the same token, as a teacher, you need to be willing to fight some of these things. It's when you fight them, you're in the same token, you're educating them. Because a lot of times we just falsely assume they're my administrator. They got all the answers. When a lot of times, as you all know in the work you do, you talk to administrators, they're still grappling with them and figured out. But it's getting teachers and administrators to come together at the table, have these critical discussions, and be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I don't know, or I'm trying to figure it out. But we have to be willing to, one, come together, but two, as teachers, collaborate on these things. And when we think about this, the bigger piece, I'm gonna hit your question about the individual versus organization.
Yeah,
we're fighting some systematic things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're gonna use for boilerplate teachers. Don't go back tomorrow and say they said burn down, students will be able to. Let's say that's the thing that's really hindering your classroom. It's hindering your colleagues. Yeah. You all should come together and provide that rationale to your administrator. We don't believe in this. This is why, but this is what we're going to do, and still give you the academic outcomes you need for students. Yeah. I don't know an administrator in America who's going to fight you doing that collectively, and you have the proof. Now, I'm going to get to that organizational piece in a minute, because one more thing before you get to the proof. One of my friends, he has one of the highest performing middle schools in the country.
Okay. His
thing is effective use of data. Not over testing, effective use of data to tell the story. If hypothetically, and again, we're just using the boilerplate, the students will be able to. If your scores are not good, and you take that away and they go even lower, it's a different conversation. If you take it away and things get better, then you have a leg to stand upon. Right. Because we still have to keep in mind, I'm not saying every student is making hundreds. Students still need to be growing. So as you make these decisions, use the data to help you. And again, I'm saying this to every teacher. Yeah, this is not about over testing. I got to give another test. No, give less. Oh my God. But Jay-Z says it best. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So we have to understand. I'm not saying there's perfect testing out there. You would never hear Dr. Childs say that. But it helps you build a case as you're changing the system. And going back to Sue's question about individual versus organizationally, I'm doing this Beyond the Statement Diversity and Inclusion Workshop series, and I'm helping people do two pieces of work. In the mirror work, that's you. That's that beautiful person you see every day. And out the mirror work, that's your organizational piece. Everyone loves to say change starts with us. I agree, but I think you have to do both at the same time. Yeah. Because as you're learning and growing to change the system, you also have to learn and grow within yourself to better even understand the system you're trying to change. A lot of us really don't understand what we're trying to change, so we work on ourselves simultaneously as we're changing. Understand we're going to make mistakes along the way, but we're always shooting for the moon, because we're still going to be amongst the stars as we keep working and growing.
Yeah. We just got a comment that says, "Hi, I am single."
My wife is probably watching this right now. So
yes, I hope she is. You're well thought
I hope she's watching. But I do have single friends in the field. I can play matchmaker.
I like it.
We can play matchmaker on the show.
There's no end to the services we provide here at
we can play matchmaker on the back end of the show. We'll do after hours.
That's right. Matchmaker. Right. At a different hour.
Right.
I'm thinking a lot about watching systems, and when I go in and I work with teachers, it's often that I'm working solely with teachers, and my workshop, even if it's on equity or whatever it's on. It's solely working with teachers, and I'm trying to make individual change from these teachers. And few districts actually look at it from the district level. They want me to come in and they want me to do these workshops, but they don't often ask for me to work with them. And so there's a huge disconnect, like what you were talking about. And how do we, in our role, they hire us, right? They hire us to do a job. How do we try to encourage the systemic change when we've really been hired to make individual or kind of like a department change?
I give you a perfect example.
Please do.
And I need to say a broad base just so some people don't get mad and try to call me out on it. There was a big time individual within the company. I can say that. And they made some decisions, and I knew they were getting bad advice. I directly reached out to that person and said my thoughts because I wanted to help them and help with their messaging. I remember talking to my mentor about it, and my mentor is very corporate minded, great person, and they were like, "Kris, did they ask you for your advice?" I was like, "No, I just gave it." And he's thinking from this sense, if my employees would have did that to me, like how he would respond. But I say that to say, even in your roles, we have to still teach them.
Yeah.
And we don't give them the full blown 100 miles an hour, but hey, I saw these things happening. Here are a couple of nuggets for you as you build your knowledge bank. And then I do a little psychology because ultimately we're both trying to help this teacher and help these students.
Right.
So here are a couple of nuggets. What a lot of times we mess up. Here's a book to read. Most people are not reading the book. I give them, here's the cliff notes, and then they can go back and pull the book later. But in your work, you're simultaneously helping the teacher. And then I get it, because our thing is always, if they get mad, what's going to happen? They signed the contract. And for me, and my mentor always says, Kris, you're going to lose out on some stuff. And for me, I'm at a place in just life. I'm like, if I lose it, guess what? I'm going to be authentic because I'm about these students. Yes. Period. That's I would my line, not even the saying, period, is how am I impacting these students?
Yeah.
And if we can't agree on that,
right,
go drive for Uber. I go drive for Uber and do Uber Eats in the evening and just have fun. Do shows like this and just relax.
Well, I mean, it is so interesting what we're talking about here, that it's problematic, and we need to come together, right? Like, we are better together. Like, we've designed this show is called Math Together, right? But like, life is meant to be done together. And what is interesting are power structures that get in the way. Like, why is that so hard? And so I think we have an opportunity to reflect on that. Why is it so hard to come together and say, listen, this thing that you're asking me to do doesn't seem to be in the service of children and giving me the right results, and I've got the data to prove it. Like, what we need to really take a hard look in this pause that we have from life as normal and commit to coming together, because when you do that, amazing things happen. So it's just so, like, why is that hard? Maybe it goes back to what you're talking about how the structures were put in place in the beginning.
But also, I look at it as this. There's a Twitter discussion I got involved with today, and I was talking about how Student Achievement Partners just released the priority standards. And I encourage teachers, just use it as a foundation. Stop recreating the work. Districts, stop recreating the work. And a lot of times we've gotten in the mindset, and I get it, someone's going to steal my intellectual property or somebody else will profit off of it. But what I'm telling us, there are some pieces that's generic in general. It's like toilet paper. Everybody needs it. Let's put toilet paper out there. Your prized possession stuff. It could be a grandparent's necklace. It could be something you hold dear. You can still hold on to that and not share it. But there's some basics we have to be able to say, I'm willing to share it. And then also in our world, when we think about like the PD world, I try to get my colleagues to understand, because in the PD world, you all know, no one wants to share. This is my lane. These are my schools. Yeah. I said, think about how many schools we have, how many students. We can individually or corporate, we cannot serve them all.
Right.
Even as an individual, if you're on the road every day of the year, you can only have, it's a max. So thinking about from the mindset, the pie is big enough for everybody.
Yeah.
I think it'll help us understand we can share. There are a lot of people in the field. We behind the scenes, we share and collaborate. And I'm probably going to start doing more things publicly with them just so others can see how we share and collaborate on things. And we're still successful in our own lanes, and there's still more work to be done. But and another piece is developing structure so people can share. Again, we're not asking you to share your, I won't even say the site name. If you all follow me on social media, you know I don't like this site. But we're not asking you to share the site, the stuff that you monetize on these sites. No, we get that. But the foundational pieces, the toilet paper, come on, let's share the toilet paper and the hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think
that's pretty crucial right now. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
well, I'm wondering, like when we have those foundational pieces, if we have good foundational resources, then it allows us some of the creativity to look into areas that might affect our students differently. And so then I can adapt what it is that I'm doing in the classroom if I have a good foundation. So, I'm just thinking about Sunil is coming on a little bit, but like he and I look like the storytelling, and we're both Indian. And so that's where I go initially, but that's not going to be necessarily where someone else goes. So I might in a region of looking for like math history, just because it's a personal interest to me, it doesn't mean that it's a personal interest to someone else. So they could look at that, and then we share those things based on the needs of our kids. And I think, but we don't want to. I think sometimes it's an ego thing. Like my kids are doing well, and I'm the rock star in this building.
Yeah.
So sorry for you, but it's not. Then it's not about kids. It's not about kids then.
So someone actually posted on Twitter. They were like, "Why don't districts share?" And they were like, "Because they don't want the next district kids to do better." So I said, "Aren't they all our kids?" And then they made a good point. Nope, they're our district kids. Those are your district kids. And
Right.
I think you made a good point in regards to just understanding all these pieces and playing this puzzle. And then you mentioned history of math. We have to do this. If you all know me, I love history of math. That is the historical or like.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna be quiet. I'll be quiet. Go ahead. Go. You all lead it.
Wait, we have a couple of questions.
Go.
Is it okay for the questions? So first of all, Garrett is here and he says hello. And then we have Shelly. Hi, Garrett.
Hey, Shelly, Garrett.
And then we have Shelly, and Shelly wants to know, in her coaching role, how do I help teachers reimagine their classroom for next year, meeting the social, emotional, and academic?
Yeah, it's a big question, Shelly.
Yeah. So, Kris, I hope you have like 2.5 hours to go down that road.
I actually had to go down that road this morning on a call with the district, so that's pretty. It's the big. So social emotional learning right now that's going to be the hot topic in the fall. I know people doing work in the area, and I've been just boasting like, "Hey, everybody's asking about social emotional. Be ready." But I think we need to look at it from two lenses. We need to look at it from an asset-based approach. Yes. Most are looking at in the fall. As you all know, I pause because I'm like, do I want to go there? I'm going to go there. There are a lot of entities out there now pushing in for certain narratives about students.
Yes.
And those narratives involve money. So, and why you're like, Kris, what does that mean? All of these, for me, I read articles, I read the author first. Where are they from? What's their background? Because it tells me what they're going to talk about. We're seeing a lot of narratives, and we do not have any data to support it because school hasn't started.
Right.
The COVID gap, students are not learning, students won't be prepared, students are in bad situations at home. It's all negative base. And I'm not saying there won't be some issues coming back in the fall. But what I am saying, people have to understand seeds are getting planted. And we're going to come in with these students had a destructive summer. I gotta save them. I'm looking at surprisingly today, you don't hear my kids. They are having a ball doing homeschool and all these other things. The kids in my neighborhood are out every day playing.
Yeah.
And I want us to look at, again, from the same thing academically, as we build these social emotional learning structures, what are some things our students are going to come in with?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do we tie it to academics? But then my thing is teaching for social justice.
Yeah.
I give you the other version of it is culturally relevant pedagogy.
Mm-hmm.
How are we then thinking about how are we teaching them things, not that they were going to use 10 years ago,
Right.
not that they're going to use now, but how are we preparing them through the future with our, as a coach, it's making you rethink the task that you're going to be using in the fall. And what is the meaning behind the task? The old faithful task in elementary, there's a car with 1,000 watermelons, one fell off.
Yeah.
They're not going to use that one. Or my high school teachers, a train leaves New York, a train leaves Miami. When are they going to meet?
Yeah.
So to me, we can tie social emotional learning and academics through bringing in some real life mathematics tasks for students that's going to help them see and understand what is mathematics. Why does it matter? Because every student's going to ask you, why do we know this? You can do it intertwining those two pieces together.
Can you speak?
Oh,
yeah. Can you speak for just a second? So I am 100% with you on like incorporating the social justice. It should be a part of the mathematics that we're doing. Like that makes it makes it relevant, and meaningful, and it's solving real problems then, right? Like, so we're considering that. But this is like that's one side of like this angel on this shoulder. This one over here is like, people are going to really mess this up and do more damage to the kids who are coming in, right? So if you've been out at marches and you've seen things online, and you have family members who've been sick and all of those things, and then we do a study of some of that data. Like, do you have any advice on that? Because that's my only concern, is that like, oh, people are, because I know it's already out there on that site that we both don't like, of like people doing that, like selling those kind of things, and I'm like, no, that's worse.
Right. And again, we live in an opportunistic society. We know when you come back, you're going to see. And I like the show. You talked about she brought in I told them beforehand, anything goes. Let's go. But you're going to see a lot of people use it as an opportunity to talk about it. Which, again, as you say, it's a fine line with those topics. Let's use the protest. Let's go ahead and go there.
Yeah. Okay.
What we need to do through collaborative efforts, we can develop quality lessons to have these discussions and collaborate with others. Because what's going to happen, people are going to go on these sites, oh my gosh, this was a great activity. We're actually going to reenact one of them. They will be on the news, and somebody's going to try something crazy.
Yeah.
Oh.
I kid you not. And this was public, so they can't say I gave out. In South Carolina, they sent home COVID packets. It was one of the Carolinas. One of their COVID packets was, you get to be, someone is a slave master, and you reenacted a right about it.
Yeah.
That was in a district issue packet. So she's right on point with people are gonna do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So there are two lanes of thought with it. A, we need to first get in front of it and put out some quality lessons that are vetted.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, we need to call out crap on that site, call out that crap. Mm-hmm. But how do we begin to have the person in the comments, she says she was a coach. How do we have collaborative discussions to think about, all right, we're going to do a lesson. And we should be doing this anyway.
Yeah.
Before I teach this lesson, let's collaborate on it, have discussions, pros, cons, which way we can go, then implement it.
That's
so all we're
missing.
doing, that's missing. We do the same thing when we say, let's teach fact families, let's have a discussion, pull it together, and then we go in. We need to keep that, how are we collaborating beforehand, having discussions. And when you have a diverse, you all going to know the theme is diversity and inclusion. When you have a diverse mix of individual and inclusive team, you can have these discussions beforehand and say, all right, I don't think that's good. Or for your group of students, but what is happening right now, you're about to hit a home run. And that's the thing where we have to have these discussions. I get messages all the time. Hey, I'm about to teach this lesson. I'm like, no, this is not the lesson, or this is great.
Right.
But don't go in it through the lens of keeping the math at the forefront,
Yes.
but then making sure understand what you're talking about. And if you don't know, be authentic and ask prior to teaching to gain an understanding. And my thing with, especially with teaching for social justice, is not about getting students to think what you think. How are you getting your students to think, period?
Right.
Yes.
And when you have these critical discussions, they get to come up with it and have every lesson I do. I don't want you to think what I think. I just want to hear what you think. But I read both sides of the coin so I can have an understanding when it comes to protesting. A perfect example, if you're going to teach protesting, you need to take a little bit of time. Tim Wise has a great article out on the history of protesting in America.
Okay.
He balances the narrative that's been pushed forth now versus who actually started protesting and what it meant. Thinking about the Boston Tea Party, it was a protest.
Yes.
And we have to have these critical discussions. And some are going to say that's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of work. But we can take protesting and not make it a lesson. We can make it a unit.
Yeah.
The same way you're going to do back families, so it's a calendar time and you will plan it. We're just going to plan out a good conscious topic and let students make sense of it through the lens of mathematics.
Yeah, and I just keep thinking how this all comes back to that salad, right? Like if we bring all those voices into the conversation, we are going to land in the right place because we're going to have all representation. And Kris, when you're talking about the history of protests and the Tea Party, it made me think our young people give me so much hope. So I have adult children. I have an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old, and they so get this. They so get this.
Totally.
And my son, who is 18, he's like, don't people understand this is how change happens? Haven't people looked at history? And I'm like, how did you get to be so smart, right? Like young people to the table in that salad, like we should be including students in the conversation. We should have student ambassadors as representation of how we're going to do social emotional learning to bring people back. And we should have people that represent their voices. It just always comes back again and again. And we just need to really push back on those structures that keep certain people in power of the conversation and say this needs to be an inclusive conversation, because it just really is the answer. We just can't miss this opportunity right now to grab hold of it and live it.
But we also have to push on the powers that be, and we know who they are.
Yeah.
And we have to call them out on their crap. We have to hold them accountable, because they're not gonna give it up. They're not gonna just say, okay, let's do it. One of my favorite scholars is John Henry Clark. He has a quote: "Powerful people cannot afford to educate the people they oppress, because once you're truly educated, you will not ask for power, you would take it." So we have to understand with the power structures in place, a lot of them are keeping things in place, some knowingly, some know what they're doing, some don't. No matter if you know it or you don't know it, we're going to push against it.
So it's interesting because some of the comments that recently came up are pretty much related to this, right? So Garrett says, are real life and relevant tasks necessary, or are tasks that make students ask productive questions necessary? And then Shelley says, how are you getting your students to think? And I feel, and Anne-Marie loves the quote, by the way, but I think that all of this comes down to giving students their own voice.
Yeah.
And where we as some white adults, I'm saying white kind of broadly, have lost our own voice. Maybe we have been just sitting by and watching all of this happen forever. And now is the time for it to change, and we believe it, and there is a platform and everybody's talking about it. And I just feel like that all of that's related to giving students their chance to think, right? So going down even to those basic tasks that you're assigning, it's much more global than that. It's all of what you're talking about, like who's in charge and who's allowed to talk.
And here's the thing. With it, he said real life and relevant. For me, I delineate between real world task and real life task. Real world task, that's that watermelon task with 100,000 watermelons. That's that train task. They are real world tasks. I'm not disputing it. I've trademarked this term called real life. That's the mathematics that's actually applicable to the students in which we're serving. And when we think about it, you're going to teach math anyway. You're going to teach problem solving anyway. All you're doing is changing the context into something that can actually help a kid survive in their college, survive in a career. And we're getting to the point where they can actually, it may save their life with what we're teaching them, these developing problem solvers and not just rule followers. That's all we're doing with this discussion and what we're trying to do with the math. And then as Molly pointed out, being a white female is getting here's the trick that's been played on America. The trick in America is the top 1% tricking the 99%. And getting people to understand and see the top 1% as a whole cares about maintaining that. And as long as they get, Tim Wise says it best, the history of America is rich white people. And when we say rich, we're not saying uber rich. The history of America is getting rich white people to think their problems are black and brown people. And when you do that, you deflect from what is going on. Perfect example. We think about right now, people looted Target and people like, oh my gosh, they're tearing up the Target. That's the 99% thinking.
Right.
The 1% we're thinking, we just shifted your attention from the billions of dollars in tax cuts we just got.
Yep.
But as long as we get everyone to think these welfare, all this other stuff, we're doing the real looting. So now you're thinking about your students. Are you preparing them to cognitively make sense and make a better place? Now, not tomorrow may not happen. The right things are going. We always don't know. How are we doing these things now and making a sense of urgency, whether you white, black, brown, orange, yellow, now? Because we have to start seeing now. At the end of the day, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We have to, and until when we see that, we start to realize as a black male that I'm standing next to a poor white guy, buddy, we both getting screwed. You know that, right? So you can either think you're not, but you're getting screwed along with me. How do we push this forward? And then even going through the whole construct of understanding where the construct of race came from and why that continually can be used. It's the oldest trick, 3 tricks in the book. Talk about separate people by race, separating by politics, separating by religion. You can't, those are the 3 taboo topics. As long as we keep those up and no one ever studies and understands their historical origins, we can keep things going forward and keep the 1% at the 1% and everybody else fighting over these crumbs and not understanding no matter what religion you are, no matter what race you are, no matter what's your political views, you're actually more similar than you are different.
Absolutely.
And I think like COVID is a perfect example of that, right?
Yeah.
So like this is not we are all quite literally in this together because it doesn't matter where it starts. Like things go from place to place. We live in a world where you get on a plane, you go to another place, one state cannot have like completely different rules than another because we all affect each other. And all of those pieces are so interwoven into how we provide opportunities for children, how we interact with each other, and even like the fight for resources with our own country right now. Like, okay, like who has more PPE versus, another place, and how we distribute all of those things. It's been the same thing in education. So we have one country, lots of states, each state has their own way of doing things. And then it gets down even to the micro level of one town over, their expectations, their resources, their ability to reach students is completely different than another.
Yeah.
And this comes from that Western mindset. that we've bought into that false narrative of this Western mindset. You have to, build yourself by the bootstraps, when originally it was literally, and I'm going the quick history lesson, the original times, everybody was in it together. You got what you needed, and you worked together because you truly believe we can work together and do better. And what I'm thinking about our white male listeners, and especially the ones in power. Right now, if you're in power, what are you willing to do to use your power and privilege to affect change? That shows me if you're really down for the cause or it's just lip service, because there are certain doors certain people can open up. They know they can open them up. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to be ostracized and hated in a sense to actually facilitate change? Or are you just going to say, hey, I like what you all are saying on this show, but I got to go back to the golf course. Be honest, that's where you stand, but also understand, as we pointed out earlier, their child just rising up. It's a different time right now. And technology is allowing people to really uncover things in the past they would have never known about or never understood.
Yeah. This is again, I'm in that place of the more that I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And we've got to continue to have these kinds of conversations because we have to do better. Like, we have a moral obligation to the children that we serve, that we take this moment in time to do things differently in September, and that we don't just say it, but we take those action steps. And that's it. Like, that's it. We're here in the service of children. We're all educators in this space, and we believe in all children. And I am committed to the power of doing the work together. We should not be working separately. And I'm going to choose to be hopeful in this moment. I really am hopeful. I've loved this conversation. I'm going to be deeply in thought in that, what do they call it? COVID-somnia? Anyone else raise their hand if you're not? So now I have more fodder for COVID-somnia to keep thinking. So I really appreciate this conversation today. And to me, my big takeaway, my big step is to get really clear on what are those key things that we believe about all students and all learners, and then how do we come together, inviting everyone to the table to move that agenda forward, and just keeping our foot on the pedal. That's my takeaway. I don't know if we each want to share sort of.
I mean, I feel like I need to push the envelope more in the work that I do, and not just be looking at it like, well, I'm going to lose this job if I say that. I've found myself in that place, and I can push the envelope.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, just keeping that in the forefront of how we support people who want to push for change and have those conversations. And I think sometimes we're in that role where we have that opportunity to be like, okay, so absolutely, we are going to be here and support you and help you make that argument and make that case for what's best for your students.
And thinking about the students.
Yeah.
The great thing about all of us and the ones watching, we have that choice. We can choose to fight. We can choose to not fight. We can choose to do right. We can choose to do wrong. The students that we all say we care about don't have that choice.
No,
they don't.
Yeah.
So when we say we're not doing something, it shows a lot who we are, but it also shows, do we really care about each and every one of those students? Every one of them.
Everyone.
Not just those students, not some.
That's right.
So we cannot, as educators, not get in the fight and get dirty.
That's right.
And we have to bring others along. I call it's like if you ever watched a track meet or like a track meet, and they're running around the 4x1 100 meter relay. There are different people along the way. When one gets tired, boom, you hand it off to someone else.
Yeah.
And a lot of people got to get out the collaboration. If I hand it off, oh my gosh, they're taking what I had. If we're in it for these students, you're going to get the baton again. But this is right now, we are in the fight of our lifetime.
I agree.
We're fighting for the soul of not just the world. And as we fight, understand there have been people who have done the work. How do you not say, let me take your work? Hey, you're doing the work. You're leading. You're driving the bus. I'm just gonna get on the bus with you and let's go.
Yeah.
I don't even need my name on the side of the bus. I'm on this bus. Let's go.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
We have to get in that mindset, knowing we're going to fight it together, and then knowing, all right, we got into rough terrain. We need to switch drivers. All right, I'm taking over. I'm gonna let's go. But we're still in this. I mean, every day we wake up, feet hit the floor, and the system says, "Oh crap, they really trying to tear it down today." Yes, we are.
Yeah.
I told someone earlier, I'm on a committee. This has been recorded, so it's gonna be funny later. I can play it back. I told someone I'm on a committee, and with this committee, it was a lot of politics. And I'm on the committee. They're like, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "I'm gonna hold them accountable because I don't play." And then they said, "What? I know you. What are you really gonna do?" I said, "Look, I'm gonna hold them accountable, and I have a seat at the table. But if it does not go where they say they're gonna go, I'm gonna burn this table down, and nobody won't have the table, and then we can start from scratch together."
Yeah.
And I mean it.
Yeah. No.
Well, the risk is the cost is too much, right? So we have kids in front of us every day. The cost is too much, and I think as white educators or white passing in my case, like it's that this idea of we have colleagues of color, Black and brown colleagues who've been doing this work for a really long time. And even though we've been doing this work, it's not the same lived experience. And so we have an obligation to like put gas in that bus, right? Because they've been doing that work for even longer. And so I'm here to support you and put gas in the bus so that it can keep going. And I'm going to be there standing behind you as an ally, like that we're going to work on this together.
Yeah, that's great. So I think we're at a good place. Does anyone else want to add anything else before we sort of wrap it up? I want to thank you very much, Kris, for being here and for having that hard conversation and listening to our lived experience, but also sharing your leadership in this space. So I'm super appreciative. And I want to remind people, here's the website again. So when we talk about like, okay, I'm ready, like I am in that bus and I'm ready, right? What can you do? You can take this workshop. So this is amazing. So Kris has set this up to be really organized and purposeful driving. Like I see the story arc of where you're going, and each video clip has a call to action. So you're saying exactly what to do. So there's the website, and take this, like sign up. They're small chunks of thing. You're not committing hours and hours in a day. It's like a 20-minute video clip. We are gonna support that conversation. So we are going to use our Math Together site as a way to bring people together to be accountability partners with you. So if you want to jump on that bus and take that journey and go deeper, we will be an accountability partner with you to have that conversation. But we can also have that conversation right here on Facebook in those comments below. Mm-hmm. So I think there's more work to do, but I truly. I almost cried when you said like we're in the fight of our life, right? Like we are. I take this to heart, and I see this moment in time as something we are going to look back on, and this is make or break who we are. So we are at such a pivotal moment, and I choose hope, and I choose to do this work together.
Yep. Next week on Thursday, we are going to be interviewing Heather Johnson. She is a math interventionist in Palmer, Massachusetts, and we're going to be talking about her role as an interventionist before COVID, during quarantine, and then how is she planning for September. So somebody on the front line is going to be with us, working with kids and sharing her experience. So I hope that you can meet us next week. And we'd like to thank Dr. Kris Childs for being with us. Today was awesome.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.